back again, fellas. And just for Dave, I've covered up the distracting things in the background and put even more distracting things in the background. Actually, what that's primarily trying to do is cover up the absolute mess that I've got back there because I'm selling some models off. Anyway, this is round 3 from my recent tournament. I've drawn Sam's Asklanders. I think I do have one report up on the channel from me playing Sam before, which is the Patio Slaughter, I think it was called, tournament. I was playing Warriors, he was playing Vermin, and he trounced me. And frankly, I wasn't loving the look of his list for this matchup either. Because essentially, like, I look at the Berserker units and those 2 Chiefs, particularly the Jarl with like 7 strength a million attacks. And I don't really like fighting much of it, because I think that even with like Druidism buffs, I feel like they're better than me at fighting, basically. Obviously, he's more vulnerable against shooting and all that sort of stuff than... Well, I mean, we're kind of the same in that regard. I guess Druidism helps me a bit. But anyway, I think that he's better at fighting, and I can't... If he does have a vulnerability against shooting, I can't really exploit it, because I don't have any of that myself. I'm not too worried, really, about those Asklander blocks with the Giants, because I don't think they fight that well, really. That's sort of my view on most Giants, because if you, particularly these ones in the units, if you don't attack them, they're stuck at the 5 attacks. It's not that amazing for their points, unless you can be stomped, obviously. So those guys I'm not too worried about, but I am worried about the Berserkers and the fact that Sam out-chaffs me. Like, he's got 4 pieces of chaff and I've got 2. And the Wargs are also really good because, like, there's a decent chance they just beat my Razortusks, particularly because they cause fear. So you can have 1 modeling contact, 1 supporting, and I think there's still a good chance to beat my combat block. Or even like my Chariots, particularly because they're faster than the Chariots. So they're a pickle, and I'd love to have a way to try and get rid of them outside of combat, but I don't. So I wasn't loving the matchup, and by this point of the day I was also pretty drunk, so I didn't have my full capacity for, like, trying to figure out a way to get around this, but we will see. Get out of here, Norton. Don't show me again. Alright. So, yeah, we'll see how it went. But going into it and looking at the list before the tournament, I sort of went through about like a third of the list, and Sam was one of them. I didn't like the matchup then much either, but figured I'd probably have some plays once we're on the board. Okay, so this is how we set up after like Vanguards and Scouts and such. I'm pretty sure Sam dropped for first, because I'm pretty sure he got first. So I don't really have many great things to say in terms of, you know, what my grand strategy was. I don't like the position of this. Like, the position of this Ruins is annoying for anything that I want to, like, any of my flankers, particularly the Chariots, but also I don't want to send my cavalry through that either. And then the Impassable here makes it a little bit difficult. It sort of really restricts my deployment zone in combination with the hill here, which is blocking line of sight, obviously. So I didn't really like my options here for deployment, basically. I think it's a little bit stupid to have the Chariots over there behind the Ruins, but I don't know that I have a better place for them, because I don't think that they are going to be able to fight one of these blocks on their own. So they're sort of more, if I can do it so that they charge and like one of them goes through the Ruins, you know, good. But they're really there just to sort of, ideally, do some damage to these Berserkers, maybe deal with the chaff if I need to. So they're not in a great position, and I'm mainly treating them as disposable over there. The Centaurs here, I sort of position them, one, because again, this hill is really annoying. I've got quite a fat battle line. So they're sort of there basically trying to zone a bit, but knowing Sam can just move up his chaff, move up his blocks, it's not really a great plan, probably. Also, what hurts me here is that I can't chaff the giant blocks reliably because I take a terror check on Discipline 7, so that's not helpful. But I do like my chances of the Centaurs actually just beating these blocks, because I wouldn't focus on the giant, I'd just focus on the units, and then because I have much higher quality attacks, I think I'm a pretty decent chance to just beat them. So over here, even though these wargs might be annoying in terms of basically mitigating the fact that I have a massive advance advantage, I do think that there's a decent chance these Centaurs are just able to deal with this flank on their own and then have control over there. And in a matchup that I don't like, taking a few of those risks I think are handy because... if it goes badly, I expect the matchup to go badly anyway. But if it goes well, it might give me enough to make a bit of a difference, basically. We'll move on to see... Woo. Bit wonky. Man, this is definitely a drunk pitch. Just looking at it makes me feel dizzy. So yeah, as you can see, Sam's given me his flank with these wargs. The reason being that actually... will drag my Centaurs further up and make them more easy to charge for this giant block. I think they were still needing like a 7 or something on the dice, but they will actually get in when they charge afterwards. Otherwise, he hasn't advanced like whole hog because he doesn't want to give me charges into his blocks that I just sort of go past his berserkers or anything. So he's reasonably aggressive with his berserkers, knowing that he's in a pretty good spot because he's probably going to beat anything. Maybe he doesn't beat the Minotaurs if I have Druidism buffs up. Is like the only thing that he probably needs to be worried about. I'm sort of okay with that, thinking that if I handle it well, I might be able to deplete them enough with like the Mongrels or the Razortusk that they're actually manageable when at their full size they're not really. One thing I probably should have done as well is he doesn't have any range damage. So I probably should have put my wizards on their own to give them greater mobility. I don't really know why I was sort of fixated on having them in a block, because I tried to maneuver them a bit during the game, and I did feel quite restricted, so I don't even know why I brought this block, because I should have just ambushed them to make them a bit of like annoying in his bunker or something. But anyway, I think that was just an oversight, like a lack of judgment there, basically. So in my turn, I reformed the Centaurs so that they could... I probably should have reformed them even one wider just to maximize my 2 attacks against his blocks, but I didn't. Mainly bringing that guy down meant that I could stay further away than him than if I just turned on my center, keeping the 3 ranks. I did lose, 4 guys to the wargs, which isn't terrific, but it is what it is. Gargoyles sort of just sat here to be a little bit of an annoyance, like causing march checks, and to threaten maybe the chaff if he doesn't use it, or his bunker if he pushes it up. They're not necessarily going to beat his bunker, but depending on or not necessarily going to be able to like win a grind, but because they'll be steadfast, but depending on where he puts his BSB, getting those gargoyles into the flank or something is like I'm pretty sure I am likely to win the combat, and then it's like leadership 8, I think, non-rerollable test. It's not bad. As you can see, and I've had this problem before, so when it's sort of against something like Dread Elves maybe, or in this matchup, obviously, because I feel like I'm worried about too many combats, and particularly not able to go out and use my greater mobility very well because Druidism is so short-ranged. So the problem that I have here and what I'm doing here is I'm sort of stuck with like a deer in headlights, where I need to be using my extra mobility, really my additional threatening units, and I need to probably be playing a bit wider than I am, which is a little bit difficult with the Mongrels and the Razortusk, obviously, with their leadership. But I can't really just sit here and let him do whatever he wants with these Berserker blocks. So this is not a good position, I don't think. And I wasn't really comfortable with it, but I didn't feel like I had the space to maneuver around. I don't know. I don't like this position. I didn't like it at the time, but even looking at it now, I don't immediately see sort of better options, I guess. Maybe at deployment things could have been better, but yeah, I don't know. It's not great. This even might have been a matchup where, because I did pay for the ambush on my, probably not the wizard, but on the bunker and on the mongrels, probably should have just ambushed them to create extra sort of areas of attack and threat. Obviously with these giants it becomes quite complicated because my leadership is really poor. So I don't know if that's really a winning strategy, but I think it's better than what I've come up with here, basically. As you can see here, his giants unit did make the charge into the Centaurs. I believe I won the first round of combat and stuck, but it looks like I lost 4 guys. Or maybe I didn't win, but I stuck on whatever leadership that would be. He's come up and he's chaffed a whole bunch of things. He's chaffed basically both these guys with his dogs, chaffed these guys both with his dogs. I do still have my gargoyles that I can jump out to chaff with. But what do I do? Not sure what I do next here, to be honest. Let's just move on to the next picture. Okay, so I sent my chariots into his berserkers, mainly just to do damage to them. I sent the Razortusk Chariot into these guys, sort of to clear them out. And then hoping that I do enough damage on my impact hits to hold this berserker block up for a round, basically. The gargoyles are pretty happy here because I'm pretty sure if they're not within general, and they don't look, the generals are back here, so I don't think they are. They are within BSB range, so it's actually pretty reasonable that I'll be able to pass that. And I did try that sneaky flank charge on his bunker with my gargoyles. One of the reasons being, basically, is that I would need a leadership 6 march test to chaff these guys. And I didn't like those odds, so I decided I'll just charge instead and see if I can take away his magic. I'm pretty sure these chariots just get butchered. Like, all of them die. I don't think I got a good spell off on them either. They don't even look like they're in range of one. I don't know. Yeah, so all the chariots are dead. The berserkers are quite thinned out, but unfortunately my centaurs did lose over here. I think... So what has he got? He's going to have 7 attacks from the unit, hitting me on 4s, winning me on 4s, and I'd get a 6 up against it. So that's 3.5, 1.75 or something, and then save a little bit, so maybe 1.5. The giant has 5 attacks, so 2.5 hits, 2 wounds, because he's wounding on 2s maybe. So that's like 3 or 4 wounds they're likely to do. Whereas I was 6 wide, so I had 12, 13. I lost 4 guys in the first round. So 13 attacks, hitting on 4s, winning on 2s. Like 6-ish, I think. And that's if I don't pass Primal Fury, which is a coin flip. So I think that the plan wasn't terrible over there. The thing that went poorly for me was the giant, in both rounds of combat, did really well. So, you know, hitting on a 4-up is always a bit of a lottery. But, yeah, basically, giant did well and caused troubles for me. I am not 100% sure what my plan here was with these mongrels, because I have charged them, right? Yeah, I charged them at the dogs. So, looking back, I can't really understand why I wouldn't have just reformed them so that if these blocks go in and overrun into my Minotaurs, say, I have a turn where I can just buff my Minotaurs. Not really sure what the plan was here, knowing that he can just, send these guys out? Even if he doesn't, I don't have any counter charges. I don't feel like that doesn't make much sense to me. Like, that's just a dumb mistake. Because even if he just sends the Berserkers in and doesn't kill enough for me to break my Steadfast, which is probably fairly reasonable, he can break my Steadfast if he chooses, because he can... I don't think he can get past here, but he can probably do it in such a way that he overruns into them and breaks it. So if he wants to, he can. And if he doesn't, I don't think anything bad is going to happen to him if he just takes 2 turns to break these guys. All that means is that he gets to do a pivot and charge in my turn. So that looks stupid. And, well, yeah, basically, so they get wiped out. These Berserkers and Wargs are fighting my Razortusk, and I'm doing nothing to him, basically. And then the Berserkers do get into my Minotaurs. Maybe on an overrun. Maybe they did kill enough of those. No, I think... So these guys did do that overrun sort of thing. Got into the Mongrels, broke their Steadfast, and they were out of here, basically. And then these guys overran into the Minotaurs, mainly to lock them in place. And I think at this point, Sam is pretty comfortable with, even if he loses that unit, he hasn't lost anything else. So, to hold those Minotaurs in place is just going to do everything he needs, basically. And that's essentially the end of the game, because these Razortusks just get butchered. I think that Lord was killing like 2 models a turn. And he's got all these high strength attacks at agility because he's lightning. And I couldn't sustain it, pretty much. What happens with the Minotaurs here is basically they beat up his Berserkers. I do win over there. I might have killed a Giant because the Giant came and chaffed me or something. But basically, they do a good bit of fighting, but at that point they're surrounded, so we didn't even bother rolling it out. We just said, like, look, I'll see what victory points I can get. And then when they were surrounded, it was his turn to charge. We're just like, yeah, they're wiped. There's nothing I can do. Because this was still pretty early. This is like turn 3 or turn 4, I think. And I don't know what happens with my bunker and stuff, but nothing is okay. So essentially the end result here was a 20 to Sam. And I was thinking, and I mean, hard, but I was drunk, so I don't know how good my thinking was at the time. But I was racking my brain thinking about how I could approach this better. And I didn't come up with anything on the day, but I think it's sort of just what I've touched on earlier, where I'm faster than him, and I can't just line up block against block and fight him because he's got better chaff. His Giants can be chaff if he needs, and those Berserkers are too much for me to handle. My Minotaurs can fight them, but the Minotaurs need to have buffs. It needs to be sort of the only thing happening. So, yeah, I don't have a great strategy of, this is how I should have deployed. This would have been much better. But in terms of an overall strategy, I think I needed to play wider. I should have ambushed the Mongrels, and at least made him, he's probably going to run the Giants out then to try and fight the Mongrels on his own, but that's at least sort of diverting his forces, diverting his potential chaff. But I still don't really see how I'm going to do a good job of picking my combats. Because even though I'm super fast, this map makes it really difficult, I think. And his chaff is just so extremely good. And I don't have any way to get... the biggest problem for beast herds, in my opinion, is mainly... I don't know. Maybe not the biggest, but one of the biggest that I find is the inability to get rid of chaff outside of combat. So... even when you just take like a nominal amount of shooting, like with my ogres, I take a couple of units of 3 bombardiers. It gives you some options to be like, oh, there's a unit of dogs. I'm going to shoot them before they are causing heaps of trouble. Or you have to use them because I'm going to shoot them, which means that you don't get to use your chaff at the perfect time. And that's something that I find I struggle with beast herds, is if I'm losing the chaff game, I haven't really figured out how to overcome that a lot of the time. With my Chariot Star list, it's a little bit easier because I've got the Chariot Star in maybe 80% of matchups. Particularly because it's normally getting my my magic as well. It can sort of just tank things, so I can charge chaff and be like, whatever, you can't charge me, you can't counter me because I'm too tough to take off. And then I've got 4 single models that, you know, a lot of chaff isn't light troops, even if it is. I can run around if it's not sort of the time for me to charge that chaff yet, or if it's not advantageous. With a blocky list like this, I don't have that ability. So I don't have great strategies for mitigating that. I think coming away from this game, I was sort of like, I'd really like more chaff. Like, I'd really like to have 4 pieces and 4. It's a little bit hard because I think the Wargs are really troublesome. Like, the Wargs are such a strong chaff unit for Asklanders. With, like, Vanguard, March 18, Advance 9 while still being decent at combat, so they can fight it, like, beat your chaff. And causing fear, which is pretty significant for a lot of Beast Herds units. So I don't know that necessarily would have saved me here, but I think in general I would like, you know, rather than 2 pieces, maybe 4 pieces of chaff with such a blocky list. Yeah, I don't have a great solution for this matchup other than just the fact that I need to play wider. I can't castle, obviously, because that's just the same problem. Maybe, and this is something that I often don't think of and I should have. I think Sam dropped for first, and given that I've seen where his blocks are and the fact that Berserkers aren't that fast, maybe I should have just stuck pretty, like, sort of with a refused flank and just sort of gone this half of the board, and I'll move up and I'll fight things one by one. It would mean that, because objective was King of the Hill, this forest was inside my deployment zone. I chose the field because of that. Sam chose like the wall or the water or something. So something that, I mean, if I'd ambushed my guys, which I don't know why I didn't, would have been a possibility, but I then sort of was trying to stuck in to protect this. So I think, but then again, because we choose those before deployment, if I'd chosen the hill, Sam would probably just deploy differently. So maybe I just need to go, I mean, maybe I can still defend this a little bit. The Berserkers I don't think are scoring. So maybe I still just choose that one, but then go, look, I have to give up the objective in this matchup, or I have to play at a disadvantage for the objective in this matchup, and see what I can do with that, basically. I don't know. I think that's probably my best strategy. I don't know. There's so many things that, like, the mongrels here don't want to fight much because my leadership gets so poor. It's one of the problems of not having a leadership 9 general. Is like mongrels are going to take leadership 8, go down to leadership 7, which is very unreliable anyway. So, and same for Razortusks actually. Like, there's not a lot that either of those units want to fight. So, I don't know. I think that's probably my best strategy. You guys might know better than me, so let me know if you reckon. If you're thinking of something I'm not thinking. But that would be, if I played this exact matchup again, I think that would be how I'd try to approach it. Particularly if... And actually also, I think if I had first turn, I might be able to do better. Because I might be able to do stuff like just scout my chaff and block his chaff on turn 1. So if he can't chaff me, he'd probably run his giants out because he's got like 7 pieces of chaff in the end. But if he couldn't run his giants out, let's just live in that world for a little bit. maybe my Gargoyles could chaff his both his units, like both his important chaff units, maybe at least some of them, and then if I've pushed up aggressively and I'm much faster than him, maybe I can just get off some of my charges of my own by taking that space. But thinking about it, I don't know why. If Sam dropped for first, that means I must have chosen table side. So I don't know why I chose the table side that I did when, as I'm talking about right now, I mean, I guess it's somewhat similar. Because he's got an impassable here, I've got an impassable here. The ruins are still going to be just as annoying. But it's probably better, I think, having the impassable near this hill. Because I'd like the space over here that he's able to deploy in. To mitigate the factor of the ruins. So I don't know how we got the situation where Sam got both first turn and what I think is the better side. I think that I've probably looked at them, not thought for long enough. Like, I've thought about this, obviously, in this video for longer than I did in the game, because you don't have forever. So, you know, if you're looking at it and you're not able to see something immediately, you just got to make a choice. So, I think probably I've just made the mistake on the sides, but I could have not made that mistake, and things would have been a little bit better, potentially. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of things I could have done better here. And there's some other strategies to try if I play this matchup or a similar matchup again. See if they work. But I do think that it was a tough matchup from the outset. And Sam's a really good player. So, like, sometimes I'm in a position where it's a bad matchup, but I can just play my way out of it. But I'm not better than Sam. So I can't... I can't just expect to be like, that's okay, he'll make mistakes and I'll capitalize. Because I'm more likely to make mistakes than Sam is. So when it's a bad matchup, I think I'm in a decent bit of trouble. But we've already seen some mistakes that I've made, so hopefully I won't make those same ones next time. I think, like the last 3 times I've played Sam, I think he's 20'd me, got an 18. And he got 18, but we didn't finish the round, and he probably would have gotten a 20 if he'd gotten it. And he's 20'd me again. So hopefully next time I play Sam, I'll give him a challenge. I'm sure he doesn't mind getting the easy 20s, but hopefully at some point he'll come away from a game and go, whew, that was tough. Anyway, I've rambled a bit about this game, but I am interested to know what you guys reckon about what I could have done differently. I think my macro plan basically meant that what happened in the rest of the game was almost irrelevant. So I think the big problem here is how I approached it on like a strategy level. Obviously, we looked at the Mongrels here overrunning for some reason, which I think is just a mistake. Particularly because, I mean, I could just... Where they were here, I could probably just flee if something charged them. I'd cause some panic tests, like whatever. Those Berserkers aren't charging anything else, so... Yeah, I think that's a details mistake, but in general I think that I was in a tough situation because I started off with a bad idea, basically. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. I will catch you for Game 4 against the legend Lucky.